Hello, BookTube and PoetryTube. I'm Mike Frost, the postmodernist poetry prognosticator, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my experiences with, well, it's actually a rereading The Emperor's Babe by Bernardine Evaristo. And this was not supposed to be the book this week. It kind of inserted itself. I was reading The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, and I will get back to this. I'm enjoying this book, but in the process of reading this book kept inserting itself into my memory. I read it back in like 2011 or something like that, and I couldn't figure out until literally just moments ago why this kept inserting itself back into my reading. And so I picked this back up, and not moments ago, I picked it back up earlier this week and reread it to find out why it kept inserting itself into my mind whilst I was trying to read The Poet X. Now, there are some similarities. They're both novels in verse, or verse novels. They're both written by Black female authors. Bernardine Evaristo is a British author. Elizabeth Acevedo is a African-American writer. So there are some similarities, but they're very different in tone and in subject matter. Well, not so much. The subject matter in both cases is a Black female who wants to be a poet. So in there's another similarity. But this is, Poet X is a young adult novel, verse novel. The Emperor's Babe is very much an adult novel. This is not YA by any stretch of the imagination. So a little bit about Bernardine Evaristo is a British female author. Her first book, an actual novel, Laura, I remember won Emma Award, a British award, multicultural award or something like that. Sorry, I'm standing in front of the window. My glasses seem to be getting darker. So anything between you and my face is better, but I don't want to wear sunglasses doing this video. She's a British writer, poet, playwright. She's very active in the theater, and you can tell that in the book that she's writing. She's gotten numerous awards. Her poetry led her to get a really sweet job as a poet in residence at the British Library or British Museum, I can't remember which, where she researched The Emperor's Babe. Let me read you a little bit about The Emperor's Babe before I'll read you the inside cover. Most of the inside covers I don't really like because they blow up a novel and carry it in places I don't really believe is accurate, but in this case it is. So Londinium, Britannia, AD 211. A city of slum tenements and sumptuous villas, of orgy queens, drag queens, and drama queens. A city where the currency is often sex, where children go to work at age 5, where marriage is a career move. In this bustling city lives Zuleika, the feisty, precocious daughter of Sudanese immigrants made good. Married off at 11 to a rich Roman, which is 3 times her age, and usually away on business, Zuleika drifts about his beautiful villa bored and seeks out to see her old friends. Several years pass, and still she craves passion, excitement, love, and an outlet for her relentless creativity. Then one night at the theater, she catches the eye of the visiting Roman Emperor Septimius Severus. Exhilarating and seductive, playful and erotic, The Emperor's Babe is a strikingly original historical novel, exploring a verse narrative that sweeps between ancient setting and modern allusions, fusing fact, fiction, and poetry. Bernardine Evaristo dazzles with her imaginative writing and her lively, affecting heroine. That's the inside cover, and it covers pretty much what's going on here. So it's AD 211. It's the Roman Empire, Londinium, the ancient name for London. Sudanese immigrants have a daughter. They come up from Sudan, and she catches the eye of a obese old Roman senator, but the father contracts her to marry this guy so that he can be the father-in-law of this Roman senator. Not the beginning of a YA novel. So I want to get back to what brought me back to this novel, but I ran across it when it was named one of the 100 most important books of the decade in 2010 by a British, the Times of Britain, which brought it to my attention. I didn't read it when it first came out. It was published first in 2001 in Britain, and then came to the States in 2002, I think. And I didn't hear about it then until I happened to be reading the article on the Times. But it's a fascinating novel. It's not like the Poet X in a lot of ways, but one of the things that I like is that the very first quote, the opening quote for this thing is, "The one duty we owe to history is to rewrite it." That's an Oscar Wilde quote that I'm very familiar with, and it sets the tone for this thing. So what I want to do is I want to link below Bernadine reading some of the excerpts from the book. She does obviously a far better job than I'd ever do. But to understand where this book is going, I will. She does read the prologue in a better manner than I do, but so that we can have a conversation about this, I thought I'd better read at least the prologue to give you an idea of what's going on here. So the prologue is ama, amas, amat, which is just a conjugation of a verb in Latin. The meaning is not important. Who do you love? Who do you love when the man you married goes off for months on end, quelling rebellions at the frontiers or playing hotshot senator in Rome, his flashy villa on the Palatine, home to another woman, I hear, one who has borne him offspring? My days are spent roaming this house, its vast mosaic walls full with the scenes on Olympus, for my husband loves melodrama. They say his mistress is an actress, a flaxen Fräulein type from Germania Superior. Oh, how they envied me, Ella Bella Negrita, born in the back of a shop in Gracechurch Street, who got hitched to a Roman nobleman whose parents sailed out of Khartoum on a barge, no burnished throne, no poop of beaten gold, but packed with vomiting brats and cows releasing warm turds on their bare feet. Thus perfumed, they made it to Londinium on a donkey, with only a thin purse and a fat dream. Here in the drizzling of this wild west town, Dad wandered the streets looking for work, but there was no room at the inn. So he set up shop on a curb and sold sweet cakes, which Mum made. He's told me the story a million times. Now he owns several shops, selling everything from vino to shoes, veggies to tools, and he employs all sorts to work for him: Assyrian, Tunisian, Jew, Persian, hopefuls just off the olive barge from Gaul. In fact, anyone who will work for Pebbles. When Felix came after me, Dad was in ecstasy. Father-in-law to the Lucius Aurelius Felix, no less. I was spotted in the baths of Cheapside, just budding, and my fate was sealed by a man thrice my age and thrice my girth. All at sweet 11. Even then, Dad said I thought I was getting past it. Then I was sent off to a snooty Roman bitch called Clarissa for decorum classes. Learnt how to talk, eat, and fart. How to get my amo, amas, amat right, and ditch my second-generation plebby Creole. Zuleika accepta es, Zuleika delectum es, Zuleika bloody good two shoes es. But I dreamt of creating mosaics of remaking my town with bright stones and glass. But no qualm. It's not allowed. Sure, Felix brings me presents when he deigns to come west. I've had Chinese silk, a marble figurine from Turkey, gold earrings shaped like dolphins. And I have the deepest fondness for my husband, of course. Sort of. Though he spills over me like dough and I'm tempted to call cook mid-cloyus to come trim his sides so they'll fit me. Then it's puff and ciao, baby. Solitude, solitude, solitude. That's the prologue. So, a couple of things. I'm a sucker for a Shakespearean reference, and that when the family comes from Khartoum to Londinium, it says, "No burnished throne, no poop of beaten gold." That's straight out of Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. Cleopatra's, of course, barge was burnished and had gold poop. Here, no poop, playing on the no poop front end of gold to cows releasing warm turds. I thought that funny for me. It's funny. Of course, they came to Londinium on a donkey as a slight biblical reference, of course, to Mary and Joseph, no room at the inn. Another reference. And even in this prologue, just to set the tone for the way she writes, I love the alliteration, the assonance and consonants of now he owns several shops selling everything from vino to shoes, veggies to tools. As a poet, you gotta love that kind of alliteration, working of things. So there's little gems, even in this prologue, that intrigued me when I first read it. And still, I enjoy it when I read those sorts of things. And it's sprinkled throughout this book. Now, there are some, what I normally dislike in my historic fiction is anachronisms, and this book is full of them, but like Shakespeare reference to a Roman making reference to Shakespeare wouldn't be right. But there's all, and they're fun and they're funny. She has a band playing at an orgy she organizes. Okay, so it's a poet reading / orgy. She's trying to get some people in so that she could do her poetry reading, and she decides to host an orgy for that, which I think would probably go a long way now to make poetry more popular again. But most people were too distracted to enjoy her poetry. But anyway, there was a band in there that she uses references to, I think, Drake and P. Diddy and some other modern day rappers and stuff that were part of the band that was playing at the orgy. So all in good fun, and it adds humor to the book. But so, because I did bring this up, the Poet X is a YA. This is not a YA novel. At one point at the end of the book, the character, the main character, Zuleika, says that this is no Greek tragedy. But it really is. If you wanted to make a comparison, it would not be YA, it would be the Greek tragedy, where usually your protagonist has one flaw and it ends up being their undoing. In this case, the one flaw Zuleika has is the desire to be loved, which you wouldn't think of as a flaw in modern day times. But remember, this is a historic novel. So you don't have the same kind of environment that one grows up with the Poet X. It's a different environment. She's married off at age 11. The main character in Poet X gets offended by the attention she gets at that age. And in this book, the girl is married off at that age, at age 11, which I can only imagine the kind of effect that has on somebody. So this is what I would, adult, and it has adult themes, and it is more of a tragedy. Beyond that, I can't do it without spoiler alerts, but there is some humorous things in here. There is some great poetry. It's wonderful references, and it keeps you reading through the whole thing. Uh, one of the things I found. Now, remember that Bernardine Evaristo studied Latin. She was the poet in residence at the museum. She researched this book. She has read extensively. She teaches now at one of the colleges in London. I can't remember which one it was, but she is no stranger to scholarly pursuits. Zuleika, just to give you an idea of the tone of this novel in some places. So she grows up wanting to make mosaics. Is more of a physical art. I don't know what the term would be for the artist that does mosaics, these little shiny pebbles that they make into pictures. So she wants to make the town bright with these things, but at some point she gives that up and decides she wants to be a poet. She's studying. So this, I'll set the scene first. She has married the Roman senator, big older guy who runs off and goes off to his mistress and off on business. She gets bored in this big villa, so she invites her family, her father, her mother, and her younger brother, who's the jewel of the family, according to his father. Nobody takes her very seriously, even though she's the hostess. Nobody's taking her very seriously. She gets frustrated with that. They've had a big meal. The father is full. Everybody's full. They've had a big meal, but they're ignoring everything that their hostess, the daughter, says. So she finally blurts out in mid-chapter here, "I've been writing poetry." But he'd, referring to the father, overexerted himself, poor love. His head propped up, overexerted himself with eating. His head propped up on one arm, was nodding off. "Poetry?" he replied eventually, an eye opening. "Yes, I've been studying with my professor, Theodorus, in my Greek lit and translation class. He said it is absolutely imperative that I speak ancient Greek. But I said learning one alphabet in a lifetime is enough, actually. He made me read Homer's Iliad, which I found bloody tedious, quite frankly. All about the siege of Troy. I mean, who cares? It's just an itsy-witsy bit old-fashioned. Theodorus says I shouldn't write poetry until I've studied the last 1,000 years of the canon, learnt it off by heart, and can quote from it at random and imitate it before attempting my own stuff. And he says it's imperative I start with hentasyllables, a la Lapina Jr. But I retaliated, saying I found the lot of it boring, to be honest, and then he really lost it. Said poetry's supposed to be difficult because it's high art. Otherwise, any Tom, Dick, and Horrentus could understand it, huh? Then he made me learn Virgil's Aeneid off by heart for my Roman history class. It's all about the founding of Rome, and it's, only 12 books long. Contemporary, because it's, only over 2,000 years old. You should hear him go on about Virgil. Nostos maximus poeta, about how the Aeneid will still be a classic text in 2 millennia from now, as if. Says all the notable poets were men, except for some butch dyke who lived in a bunch of lipstick lesbians on the island of Greece, but she was only really a minor poet. And did I know what an aseptic meant, or trochee, or spondy, or dactyl, or cretic? No? Oh, surprise, surprise. Well, when I did, then I could give him a backcheck. And anyway, I'd never write good poetry because what did I know about war, death, the gods, and the founding of countries? But you see, Dad, I really want to read and hear the stuff about us, about now, about Nubians in Londinium, about men who dress up as women, about extramarital peccadillos, about girls getting married to older men. And on that note, in the words of the great God Pinley, the one too early, the other too late. And I don't care about the past, and I ain't writing for prosperity. He also says I should write for readers 5 centuries hence. Well, I'm a thoroughly modern miss. And who knows what life will be like then? The Caledonians could rule the world for all we know. So. I've started composing a few ditties. At least I've found a way to express myself. I know they're not brilliant yet, but you'll see. If I keep at it, watch this space. Do you want to hear one? I was exhausted, my cheeks burnt, my fists were clenched, my chest was tight. I was frowning, I was frothing. I would make contact with these aliens. Hello? Anyone home? He was silent for a while. Then, just when I thought he'd nodded off, he looked up, made a sweeping, pregnant belly gesture. Toot, he said in a throaty, sleepy voice. What? I replied. When you gonna make a bambino? Oh, sod off, you fucking twert. Nearly tumbled out of my mouth. Conversation keeps going. You see the tone, what I'm trying to say. So the tone goes from there, and she has 2 friends, well drawn out characters in this book. Alba, a friend of hers from childhood, and Venus, a transvestite, also the older, wiser person that provides advice. But they're both funny and remarkable characters in and of themselves. Alba never really finds true love. Venus, both of them go to the orgy, and Venus finds her true love at the orgy. But this, as I read in the beginning of the book, she falls for, when her husband's away, she falls for the visiting emperor, and they have a love affair, which is described in the book. But this is a Greek tragedy. It doesn't end well, nor should it. But it ends very satisfactorily. There's a difference between ending badly and ending unsatisfactory. This has a very satisfactory ending, very apropos of the time period and the type of writing. So I did say I wanted to get back to why this, and it's the strangest thing. It has nothing to do with either book, but something just popped in my head and made me go back. So I thought I'd share with you. Nothing to do with the review. The review is great book, great writing, great poetry. Pick it up, read it. That's my review. So what struck me now, outside of the book, not a theme in this book, but at one point in the Poet X, she mentions having her period. And it is treated, as is often the case in the culture she's raised in, which I'll get into when I do the review of that book, as a moment of shame, as something to be hidden, something to be taken away from. She's from a Catholic family, and it is culturally the standard now in a lot of different cultures, not just the Catholic culture, that a woman at the time of the month, however you want to put it, is to be put away. It's considered unclean, often called unclean by many cultures. And then there's a moment in this book, if I can pull it open. Now, it's not the theme of this book, not part of the book, but one chapter outside of which, and this is what kept calling me back to this book. I remembered it from the time I read the book, found it remarkable, but I wasn't doing booktube at that time, so I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. But the chapter is called It's That Time of the Month Again. And it's a short poem. Let's see if I can, it's not a long poem here, just a short poem outside of the normal conversational tone of the rest of it. Called It's That Time of the Month Again. And it reads, Wind, I feel you stir this blazing summer night, this empty roof, this sleeping town, this great stone wall that circumvents us. I have never left its gates. What is out there? Damn you, Jupiter. My womb is stuffed with shifting cumulus. Sky presses down on my thoughts like the lid of a lead coffin. And I shrug my silken nightie to the ground. Bring me showers. Make my red dye come. Wet these cupped offerings, swollen cones, sore with ova, aroused with revolving thumbs. Let the sky crack with silver. Let me hear thunder. Let me sleep this terrible naked night. So in the scheme of things, that's just a side. It's not part of the regular novel, but it made me start to thinking about the way culturally people think about a woman's menstrual cycles. I know it's looking at me, strange thing for me to be thinking of. But I've often, as a father of daughters, I've often thought, if we started changing our thinking, or women started changing their thinking about culture, started changing their thinking about that time, what psychological changes would that create? If we return to the age of Bacchus celebrations, for those that are not familiar, Bacchus was a Greek god that's often associated with women and drinking, and women drinking, celebrating womanhood and all its manifestations. If we got culturally or psychologically reoriented to that kind of thinking, away from it's shameful or unclean, how would that affect but females' physiological response? Would it change it? I know, a strange course of thought. It had nothing to do with either book. All right, so I don't want to confuse anybody that this is a part of the book, but just a side note. And I don't want in the comments to get into this discussion about female menstruation cycles. But it was just an odd thing to pop in. It made me come back to this book and read that, a momentary celebration, and how that's different from the way we view things, and culturally many cultures view things now. Nothing to do with the book, but a side thought that drew me back to it. Back to the review. Great book. Pick it up. If you ever get a chance, pick it up, read it. You'll enjoy it. I promise you. Well, if you're YA, you might have to think about whether you want to read Greek tragedy kind of thing. But I loved it. And that's my review. Thank you for spending some time with me. I know this went a little bit long because it was sidetracked, but thank you for spending the time with me, and have a great day, BookTube and PoetryTube.